Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to this episode of the Conscious Grief series. I am delighted to be joined by Angela Clement today. Angela is a healer and a grief coach and has more recently been widowed, but has had a very interesting journey to healing. So I am very excited to be speaking to you today, Angela. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here as well. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, and I know that you have been in a former school principal, and you're now working in the space of healing as a result of your dear husband Blaine passing away. So maybe first of all, you could tell us about, what happened and tell us a little bit about Blaine and your life together to start with.
Sure. Yeah. So Blaine and I were living in Southwest Saskatchewan, and we had a ranch, actually a cattle ranch, and I was principal at the school there, as you mentioned, and that was the way we raised our kids there. That was our life, and it was an amazing life. We really enjoyed where we were and what we were doing. The town was really small, so you had that small community feel, and then it seems like one day he wasn't feeling well. He went to the doctor, and to our surprise, it was colon cancer, and it was stage 4. And so, not great odds with that, but we kept, a lot of hope. And that happened in January of 2021. And then he passed in the end of October of 2021. And so it seems like, through all of that, my healing became, just started to come to the forefront. And so I started to try to, I was always playing with it, and I was always, interested in it, but I had never taken it to that step of where, I really stepped into it and started to use it. And so with Blaine being sick, I thought, well, what have I got to lose? I'm going to try some of these things. And I also had healers working with him and myself. And so once he passed, it just seemed natural that I would continue with that and keep doing it. I had retired from my position to help look after him. And it was time for me to retire. It just seemed like that timing was right. We had sold the ranch. We were going to, retire together. And so, I think that's why my journey ended up, just taking this step into this healing, and then the grief, because that just seemed like there wasn't a lot of support out there for me. I just felt like we were, as a society, kind of expecting each other to figure it out. I feel bad for you, but you'll be okay. And I wasn't. So what do I do, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you were at this new chapter of your lives, both of you, that you were about to enjoy your retirement, and that life didn't go as you had planned.
No, and we had plans. It was like he talked about, getting a motorhome and driving across Canada, and we were going to do a lot of traveling together. And we were just stepping into it, just starting to think about, what it would look like, and then that was it. So yeah, it's a really strange thing, grief. It really changes your life. It completely changes your life.
Yes. And you have, you're in that right now, how it's changing your life. So
Yeah.
when you were, feeling sort of lost in this sea of grief, and you were not feeling that you could get the support that you wanted. But you said that you found healers.
Mm.
So what sort of modalities of healing were you getting?
Yeah. So, I mean, the experience that I had, my son, when he was very young, he had something called Hirschsprung's disease. It's a bowel disease that, um, they did some surgery for, but it just didn't seem to help. And so we had come across a healer through this process of trying to find out what to do with him. I had a friend that suggested, and she called herself a metaphysical healer. Mm. And so I did a little bit of work with her, that would have been over 30 years ago now. And then that was kind of what I played with all of this time. So when Blaine got sick, and maybe just a little bit before, my mom had a friend who was a healer. Her name was Joan Tremblay, and so I had enlisted her to help out, and basically everything was done, through the phone or on Zoom or. And so she didn't really have a name for her modality because it just came to her. It just, she suddenly just had that gift. And the other healer that I had working with me, I had her name from Adrienne Blackwell, who is another energy healer, Anna Kur. And she started out with the wonder method, which is a whole nother thing that I ended up taking some classes from Alan Harriet, who developed this wonder method. And so what I do now is like, a mix of a lot of things. It's Reiki, but it's also wonder method. It's also, other kinds of energy healing that, have just come to me naturally, I guess. Yeah.
Amazing. And so when you were really feeling the pain of the grief, just for thinking of people who are listening to this, who might be in a similar position as yourself, recently widowed, how was that healing helpful to you?
Well, basically what would happen is some of those really big emotions that would come and just, it was like I couldn't stand it. I didn't know what to do with it. It was just taking me over. When I met with these healers, it just lifted. Mm-hmm. And I can't explain, some of the really heavy grief and sadness would just lift, and there would be a peace, just a knowing, that I was going to be okay, that it was going to be okay. And that is what got me through, is just, having that help and just knowing that that was there and that I could access it. And then learning to do that on my own, for myself. I couldn't always, sometimes I needed help, but I learned that sometimes, yes, I could release some of this on my own. So it's kind of like a combination of getting help and learning to help yourself.
Yeah, which is fantastic, because now you can do that, and you have the ability to help others as well, as you mentioned. So you're using a host of modalities to support other people. And what else do you advise or help those who you're working with?
Well, my work has become very intuitive. So it depends on the person. So whoever comes in front of me, different things will come to me to suggest. And they are, they could be anything from, watch this person, their YouTube video, or it could be, read this book, or it could be, just a simple energy exercise routine that I might introduce, or it's just, I don't know from one person to the next what's going to come, but it seems like what does come is very pertinent and important for their healing.
Mm. And would you say, what would you say has been the most sort of pertinent in your own healing? like the thing that's helped, or yeah.
Well, I think the biggest thing at the beginning was just having some hope that I could heal, because I think that was a big part, was that there were so many people on Facebook and everywhere that would say, you're going to grieve for a lifetime. So just, you'll get used to it. That's just the way it's going to be. And I refuse to believe that. I refuse to believe that I was going to be in that much pain for the rest of my life. And so I just kept searching for people who didn't say that. And I come across, Julie Clough, who ended up being my grief coach, and also a fellow by the name of Sean Doyle, who wrote a book, The Sun Still Rises. And both of them were very positive in their outlook. And yeah, I think, it depends on how you define grief lasting forever. I'm always going to miss my husband, right? I'm always going to miss him. But it doesn't feel like at this point that I can't live my life, that I can't go on, that I can't have joy and excitement and purpose. And I think that was the piece that I was missing, that I was never going to be happy again, right? And so, yeah, so I think that was the biggest thing in the beginning, just having that hope and knowing that I could heal and that I would be okay and that life could be good again. In fact, it could be exciting and joyful.
Yeah, that is a really powerful message of hope. And you've created that, you're a living proof of how that's been possible. I mean, you also say that you have, almost you've had quite a rapid experience. And I wonder if that is partly to do with your, spiritual openness.
Oh, I believe it is. Yeah, because with that spiritual openness comes an understanding about, life and death, and how, what we were meant to do here on this earth, what our purpose really is, and why people come and go from this earth, right? And so all of that comes to light, and then you can see it in a different way. It's not that, death is taking someone away forever. It's not that feeling. And I think that is what people, that's why they grieve, is because, they just don't believe maybe that there is that life beyond. And even if they do, knowing spiritually and really feeling and being able to understand it makes a huge difference, because you're always questioning it, right? You're always questioning. The mind is always questioning. Is that real? Are you sure that's real? Like, even me on the path, as far as I've gone down and the things that have happened, will still question sometimes whether it's real, right? So there's always that. But, basically I have this new relationship with Blaine, I will say, that helps carry me through. And I built that early on. And I think that is the reason why I've had this rapid progress, is that I feel like he's been with me this entire time, and he's never left my side.
I absolutely love that. So you're continuing your bond with him through a spiritual connection, and that's supporting you, and it almost feels like accelerating you in your life purpose.
Yeah, and I really think that this is my purpose. I mean, it feels like it's because it feels so good to be doing what I'm doing, right? And the transformation from school principal, I was a very quiet school principal. I didn't speak out. I'd go to administration meetings and hope that nobody asked me any questions so I wouldn't have to speak for the group, you know. And so now in this place, doing these things and feeling good about it and being okay with it. Sure, sometimes I question what my friends think about me now because it seems like there's such a difference between where I was and where I am now. But just learning not to judge that and just being happy where I am and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And trying not to question.
Well, I really identify, what you were saying about how our logical mind, even if we believe in the afterlife and having the spiritual connection, it's amazing how we can forget very easily, that we have that relationship, and that we can sometimes go into that part of us that's like, is that, like you say, is this real? Am I crazy for believing these things? And I guess that's sort of, why we have to continue with the spiritual practice and stay amongst people who share that with us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good point. Building the community around you that helps support that, I think is super important, because without all of these, supportive people like yourself, the people that now I have kind of built into my life, I don't know where I would be. I honestly don't know, right? Because it's a lot. It's a lot for the mind to try to grasp. Well, it just simply can't. That's just it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like that you're bringing up that sense of community and how that's important. Did you have a community while you were in the deep grief that you could connect with?
Well, I think one of the things that I did, the grief coach, certainly that helped a lot. And then I also took an energy healing course from Adrian Blackwell, which then as a class, we supported each other. So, just getting into that and just, even though I felt, in the beginning, it was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I've never done anything like this. And, but there was a lot of other students in there that were feeling the same way. Like, I don't know why I'm here either, yeah. And so you kind of grow together, right? And we're still growing together. We're still meeting and learning from each other. So yeah, I think it's super important. It's really important to find that place, find your tribe, so to speak, I guess, the people that resonate with you.
Yeah. And I think that's a nice thing to also tell people, that it doesn't have to be a grief group per se, as Adrian Blackwell's course wasn't necessarily aimed at people who are grieving, but that you found you found a community amongst that of like-minded souls, if you like.
Yeah. And I mean, I followed communities on Facebook too, but I found that sometimes it was lacking that spiritual aspect. Maybe it was lacking that the tools that I needed to help me move forward. It was more of a sharing, which is important, really important. To have your grief acknowledged, I think is, that is huge. And so being a part of a community to even just have that piece is gigantic. But then taking that one step further and, exploring spirituality and our gifts and, why we're here. I think it takes it to a whole new level.
Yeah, it does. And I was thinking, like, if you're having a griefy day, for example, you're just really missing Blaine and, wondering what it's all about, like, what sort of things do you do in those days to support yourself?
Well, interestingly enough, I just had one, so I'm very fresh. I I had decided one morning here recently to clean out his closet, his things, his clothing. And it was very emotional. And it took me a while to even get to the place where I could do it. I was kind of procrastinating on it. I just didn't want to deal with that. It just felt like kind of maybe it was the last piece, and I just didn't want to let those things go. And so, I was doing a lot of things there. So I was journaling, writing down how I was feeling, trying to figure out why, I was doing this, procrastinating. I was making up all kinds of excuses why I couldn't do it yet. and and then, I do a lot of just sitting with myself and in quiet and just kind of just breathing, relaxing, but not putting any pressure on myself to really achieve anything by that, just sitting with it and seeing what comes. Because sometimes huge revelations would come just sitting there. Sometimes I will go to my altar because I have a picture of Blaine sitting there, and I have little mementos from aunts and grandmothers and things that, people who have passed on that were special to me. And I think about my ancestors, and I just kind of sit there on the stool, and I just, sometimes I'll light a candle and I'll just breathe and I think there's some strength there from those people that can come to you through this. I realized, I had an aunt and a grandmother that went through the same thing. They were young when their spouses passed away. And so, I just kind of said a prayer and asked them for help and support. I did some yoga and this is new to me, but energy medicine yoga. I did some of that. There's a lot of things that I've kind of just picked up along the way and put into my toolkit. And I will try all of the above until I feel that joy coming back again, and or get a sense of direction, because I wasn't feeling good even after, I felt lighter after I had taken his things and put them away and got, I know it was the right thing to do for me at that time, but I still had that heaviness of grief and missing him. And, it still was there. And so continually just trying different things to help release some of that thinking. Some of it's the thoughts that are going through your head that are making that energy heavy. And some of it is, just releasing some of the sadness and things that we kind of tend to hang on to because we think that it's helping in some way, and so, and just allowing that to be. Sometimes it just has to be like that for a while, and you just have to sit with it and let it. And it seems like the once you relax and kind of let it be, that's when it releases. It's the strangest thing. And I'm still practicing every day, still practicing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that and sharing of that you've been going through Blaine's things. Did you keep anything specific?
I did. I kept a shirt of his. It's going to be my paint shirt because I started painting and I thought, oh, wow, this will be great. Every time I go to paint, I'll have this. I made some ornaments out of his clothing for family members, and I'm going to make a few more of those. So I kept a couple of shirts to kind of do that, and a couple of pillows I want to make. But yeah. And one of the excuses for me not doing it was that, right? Like, it was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. So, I'll just keep all this stuff in the closet that I don't need until I get this done, right? And I just wrote a blog on it. it's a kind of a gut wrenching process to be able to let go and detach from those things, because we, for some reason, as humans, we attach to all these things that really aren't us. And, I was realizing that these things aren't him either. They're just things. And, yeah, so it's a tough transition from, to just let go of that stuff, because he's still here in my heart. He's never going away. The love never goes away, never ends, right? So letting go of that stuff doesn't mean that, I'm letting go of him in any way, but that's what it feels like in our human self. That's what it feels like.
It does. And when my mum passed away, I was a little like, oh, it's just stuff and it doesn't mean anything. And I was a little bit more ruthless about not wanting things. I think I found the process so stressful of going through all of her things, because she had a lot and we had a family home stacked full of stuff, and I just thought, this is so stressful to have a lot of things.
Right.
But I'm grateful because my sisters did keep more of her things, but I have to say I do regret not keeping more of her things, because I think I've got to the stage now where I'm a little bit more, actually, things are representative and they do carry their energy, and it is nice to get things that they've touched and had. So sometimes I think it's important to take our time as well. And even though we can tell ourselves it's just things and they don't matter, they do carry meaning.
Oh, yes. And memories, right?
Memories,
Yeah. 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 And I think there's a balance there, right? You can't keep everything that they had. I think about Karen Kingston that wrote the book about decluttering. I can't remember the title of it right now, but she talks about the energy of things. And I really think that, like the paint shirt, for example, it gives me good energy to keep that and wear that and in honor of, and use it when I'm doing something joyful and happy, right? And because I think that's what he would want, not to have the feelings of sadness or regret, but those feelings of, memories of happiness and the times we had together, and to have some things that help that along, right? And not, the sadness and because as valuable as that is for healing, it isn't where we want to stay. It just isn't.
Yeah.
So I agree. Some of the things are important, and I certainly didn't get rid of, I've still got his wedding ring and, that kind of stuff. I likely won't ever get rid of all of those things. That's not the intention, but I think, you can have too much stuff.
Absolutely. I know. And I always think, gosh, I'm always bringing things in, more bags in and not getting rid of them at the same rate, because that energetically, clutters us up, I believe, too. So it's good to keep our spaces.
But like you say, you got to figure that out for yourself. What's what works for you,
Exactly.
And take your time. Taking your time, I think, is important too.
Yeah, I know, because I think sometimes in our sort of, depending on what kind of family you come from, sometimes there's like, let's be efficient and let's get this done and dusted, and actually it doesn't always serve us to be super efficient in grief.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to, his stuff was here and it wasn't, it wasn't an apartment I had to clean out, or, I mean, and we had done some of that because when we moved, we had to get rid of some things. So some of it had already been done before he passed away, which was helpful too. That helped a lot. Yeah. And then, I just remember when my grandmother passed away, the family, when we went to clean out the house, they said each of us grandkids could pick one thing from the house for our own. And I just remember that being so comforting. And I still have this vase that I picked from my grandmother. And so, yeah, it's nice to have something like just even that one thing, felt good.
Yeah, that's lovely that you remember that. It's making me think of my sister's children. Their grandmother died in the last 2 years, and they did the same thing. And they picked things, and I'm sure they'll have that for a lifetime, that memory. It's very sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lastly, I would really love to ask you, about, this is called the Conscious Grief series, and just how would you describe the term conscious grief?
I think really, and I think this is something that I keep saying over and over, is that paying attention to your own emotion as you're going through grief, and really acknowledging what you're feeling, and just embracing all of it and not trying to push it away, but allow it to be, I think really helps to move you through the grief. And then just surrounding yourself, because that, feeling those emotions, and just having a lot of love for yourself, because really that's what it comes down to, is love. In the end, it really always comes down to love. And so just loving yourself no matter what happens. I keep saying to myself, I can't do this wrong. I can't do this wrong. I can't do this wrong, because I can't. You keep thinking, well, if I shouldn't have done it that way, I should have done it this way. No, you're just, you're doing the best you can with what you have and what in this place and time. And even when I look back in life, I think, there are things that happened, Blaine's death would be huge, right? That's one thing that I think, wow, that was a terrible experience. But there's always growth that comes from these things. And so, just choosing consciously to embrace life, embrace these things, no matter what they are, whatever you're feeling, it's all okay. And to just, remember that we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah.
And it's important to recognize that from time to time.
Thank you. I think that's a wonderful description of conscious grief. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Angela, could you tell the viewers about your free gift that you have for them?
For sure. Yeah. So through my process of gathering a community, I built an opportunity for people to come and just be in a environment where they are supported in grief. And so about every 10 days or so, we do what I call a grief group get together. And there's no agenda with these. There's no expectation. It's just a place to meet, and you can talk about the things that you're going through. Often what ends up happening is somebody will bring up something that's happening, and then there will be all this good advice that come from other people, resources that other people are using that we can share. And so it's just turned into this really cool little place to hang out in your grief. If that sounds, I always wonder about, what people think when they first get into grief and you say, well, this is a cool place to hang out in your grief. But it really is. It's a comforting space, and it's important to have grief acknowledged, and it's a place to do that. And my energy allows that space to be healing and comforting. And so, yeah, I hold these, like I say, every 10 days for free. You can sign up for them and be a part of them. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Angela. So click on that link below and join Angela's get together grief groups. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again for being here, and thank you to everybody that's been watching. It's been really, really wonderful getting to know you, Angela. Thank you for all that you're doing for the grief community.
Thank you so much, Tara. I really appreciate it.
Okay, take care. Lots of love.